Hi everybody, this is Jeff from GamerTheory.com and this is my video review of the PS Vita. Launches February 22nd, 2012, which is tomorrow. And I've been spending, a lot of quality time with this thing, and I'm ready to deliver my verdict at this point. So let's go ahead and let's start with the hardware, talk about the software, and then I'll give my final impressions. Okay, let's take a look at the hardware. The Vita itself is a solid piece of hardware. Nice, well-built system. Maybe a little bit lighter than you'd think, but it has a good heft to it, so it definitely feels sturdy. Obviously, the big showcase piece on the Vita is its large OLED screen. Beautiful screen. Makes things just look real bright, vibrant, and they really just pop on the screen. Can't say enough about it. Now, I'm a guy who's had a Galaxy S2 smartphone, so I'm used to this type of technology, but it's still impressive. It's better than anything we've ever seen on a handheld gaming dedicated device before, and it's pretty obvious the second you pick it up that you're dealing with a much superior screen. So the Vita has a D-pad and 2 analog sticks for your kind of directional inputs. The analog sticks themselves they're nice. They're really responsive and accurate. It wouldn't hurt, I think, if they were just a touch bigger. And one thing I really wish is that Sony would get on board with the convex analog sticks. With concave ones. They currently use convex ones. Same way with the PS3, where they're rounded out. It's a lot more comfortable on the rounded in style. Now that's probably to maintain some consistency with the other PlayStation family products, but I think it's time to make that switch. Other than that, though, they work really well, and they're a huge improvement over what was on the PSP. The PlayStation buttons, they're great. At first glance you look at them, you might wonder if they're a little too small, but they're perfect. And I have fairly large hands, so happy with that. The 2 shoulder buttons, very similar to what we had with the PSP. Everything's familiar there. Obviously, it's a touchscreen on the front and a touch panel on the back. The only problem I have with the rear touch panel is it's so large as to mirror the front panel that you get a lot of false positives as far as touching it while playing. Now, I know you're supposed to hold it with your fingers curled under and kind of resting here and here, but with my size of hands, it's pretty hard not to have my hands in it, and I actually like to have my fingers kind of resting out to the back of it. There's a front camera here and a rear camera there. Obviously, you can take pictures and some simple video with the device, but mainly it's going to be used for augmented reality and gameplay applications. The video quality and picture quality itself is not that great, but it's nothing to really complain about. Most people aren't going to be taking a lot of video with their gaming device. On top is where you have the cards. Pull that open, and then they kind of pop out. The gaming cards themselves are pretty small. You're going to have to be careful not to lose them. For comparison's sake, here is a 3DS card, so you can see that. Nice, compact, really thin, not a lot to say about it. So up top is where those go in, and then down on the bottom is where we have the charging port and the headphones, as well as here we have a little slot for the memory card. The memory cards are absolutely minuscule. I'm not going to take it out because the less handling of that, the better. But the only real disappointment when it comes to the memory card, I mean, the size is fine. We're used to micro SD, so it's not like they're unprecedented in their size. But the one thing I don't like is the fact that it's a proprietary card and they're expensive. But overall, the PSP is a great piece of hardware. It is a fingerprint magnet. As you can see, it marks up pretty well, so you'll probably want to keep something to wipe it down, and obviously a microfiber cloth. I do really like the hardware. There's tons of potential here. In fact, when you think about it, the Vita has more input capabilities than pretty much anything else. You've got front and rear touch, you've got a GPS that's built in, you've got the front and rear cameras, the dual analogs, the standard buttons, shoulder buttons. It's great. So there's a lot of potential here. It's going to be up to the developers to know how to use it. The Vita itself is capable of charging over USB, so you can charge off a laptop or a PC, or you can even charge it off the PlayStation 3 itself. It does also come with a brick that you can plug into the USB end, plug straight into the charging brick. So that's a look at the hardware itself. Pretty happy with it, and I think if you've used a PSP in the past, it's pretty familiar. It's just a little bit thicker. It's much more comfortable to hold and play overall. I think it's a great design, and I'm really happy with it. It's not very easy to just slip in and out of a pocket. In fact, when you compare it to, say, like the 3DS, it's much larger, and that's okay. With a device like this, it's something that you're more often not going to be putting in a bag or a case rather than trying to slip it into a pocket. But again, really happy with the hardware. I think it's a solid design, and give it, top recommendation. If I could change only one thing, it would be the screen itself, not the OLED tech. That's great. It's that it's not glass. It is plastic. Now it feels like a real durable, solid plastic, but it's still going to be prone to scratches, as it's not the type of glass that, say, is used on smartphones, where it takes a whole lot to scratch them up. So you are going to have to be careful with them. I would make sure to keep them dust free, keep it wiped down each time you're going to play it, so that you don't scratch it up with dust or particles or whatever. And definitely don't just throw it into the bag without the screen being protected. Alright, let's evaluate the software a little bit. The Vita here, I think it has a really nice operating system. This is the lock screen. Just kind of pull it down to unlock, and the software itself is really simple and streamlined. Obviously, it's still going to be a work in progress. There's been 2 updates already to the firmware since I received it, but I think it's a nice, really quick and easy to use system. So basically the way it is each one of these bubbles is an application or a game, some sort of program you can use. You tap on the bubble and it opens up what's called the live area. I think these live areas are great, and even though it introduces another step into getting your game, it's an awesome concept. So once you get into a live area, you can touch that to start, or there's shortcuts, and these shortcuts are going to vary by the type of application. In the case of Hot Shots Golf, you can go to the PlayStation Store, and that would be anything that's related to the game, so any digitally delivered items, it'll take you straight to that. There's the official website. If you want to, it'll launch the browser for you and take you to the Hot Shots Golf website. There's the Daily International Tourney. Now that is a feature of the game where each day there's an online tournament that you can compete in. And then up top there's just the user manual, there's a refresh, and then again opening up you can open up the internet there. Down here there's notifications, and if you click that, it'll show you notifications specific to the game. So it's telling me that I've got a friend that's got 100 total birdies. It's quite impressive. So that's pretty cool how that works there. And obviously the system level stuff like system notifications are available. If you want to close an application or a game, this is how you switch in between them. This is stuff that's currently open, and you can close it. So pretty nice. It's basic multitasking. So like I said, you can have multiple things open and you can swipe to move in between them. But some things, like for example the browser, if you open the browser, it does make you exit out of your game. Maybe a future firmware update will allow you to keep the game suspended while you browse, but at this time you can't. Customizing the screen is pretty easy. You just kind of hold down for a second and it pulls it up. So if you want to change your background color, you just do that, tap it. There you go, pretty simple. If you want to move the order of the bubbles around, just slide them around. I've kind of got my most used ones up here on the top, and then down below some of the other applications. So really nice, easy to use software. There's some cool things that come built into it, such as the camera application, the browser, your friends. There's this near. And what near does is it tells you if there are people playing nearby. If you have a 3G version, such as I have, it'll track it as you're out and about, and if not, it just will track when you're in Wi-Fi range. The 3G version also does have a built-in GPS, so it can be really, really accurate. Pretty cool program. It's, I guess, kind of like the Street Pass feature that you see on the 3DS, but maybe taken to a little bit more of a crazy level. So, pretty neat stuff there. Overall, no complaints about this software, except for sometimes there are a little bit of UI issues where maybe sometimes to go back you swipe to go back, or sometimes you swipe down to go back. It depends on the application. I'm sure going forward they'll work a little bit more consistency on the commands. None of the buttons or D-pad or anything work in moving it. You have to use the touchscreen. That's okay. But for some people like me, when you just wipe down your screen and you're getting ready to play, you don't really want to start tapping stuff if you don't have to. Again, not a big deal. The software itself is great. PSN Store, I have found it actually to be quicker than the PlayStation 3 counterpart. I found it to download quicker, and navigating with touchscreens much easier than kind of fumbling around with a controller. So it's a good job that they've done with that, and I think for people who are familiar with using the store, they'll just jump right in and they'll notice that yes, they're quite a bit quicker. It's also on a software end of things, this does have PSP compatibility. It's not 100% compatibility, but it does have most PSP titles. You can download some of them directly, and then there's the kind of an odd quirk that some you have to transfer from the PS3. So you can download it to the PS3 and then transfer it to the Vita. For some reason, you can't download it directly from the store. But the PSP games look great on it. It looks good on this OLED screen. So yeah, there's some things that probably they can tighten up on the software. I have some issues with the way it handles connections to the PlayStation Network. I would guess it's a battery saving measure, but it'll disconnect quite often from the PSN. So say you'll check your friends list and it'll say connecting to PSN. You wait for it to connect, then it jumps into the friends and it does a quick sync. Then maybe you decide to open up a game. Well, for some reason you jump into the game, it starts telling you it's connecting again. And that's because when you left the friends application, it disconnected. So it's not a big deal, but I guess it's probably a good trade-off to have longer battery life on the system. But it is a little bit weird when you think, hey, I just signed in 10 seconds ago, why am I signing in again? Not a huge deal, but definitely kind of a funny little quirk. And maybe that's something that in a future software update, they can make it optional to always stay connected or to connect on demand. But overall, for a very kind of for their the early firmware versions of it, we're on 1.61 right now. It's great. I think obviously it's a little bit more simplistic than what you'd be used to with a touch phone, but with a gaming device, 99% of the time I'm just going to jump in and I want to get my game started. I don't want to fumble around and mess around with it. It starts up quickly, and I hope it's always that way. So pretty good stuff from the software side of things. Alright, so what do I think overall of the PS Vita? Well, I've got the 3G version here, and I like it quite a bit. I think that, as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the hardware, there is near limitless potential here. There's so much that can be done from a gameplay side of things if the developers will just get bold, get daring, and get creative with it. Much like the DS was a little bit confusing at first, once developers decided to take some risks, we saw some truly spectacular content. The Vita has that. It's got the muscle to produce excellent console quality visuals, but I hope they don't just get hung up on that. I hope they really decide to leverage the touchscreen, use the back touch, more than just porting good dual stick games to the PS Vita. Let's see some creative, imaginative content. As I said, in the software side of things, there's still a little bit of kind of rough edges, but for the age of the system, I mean, it hasn't actually officially launched yet, it's really good, and I like it. I think it's an attractive design, and I think that this is just miles better than the cross media bar, which I've never been a big fan of. The 3G is something that people have actually asked if it's worth paying the extra money for, and we need to be honest with online multiplayer. It's going to be limited to Wi-Fi only for simultaneous multiplayer, it's only going to be asynchronous play that takes advantage of 3G, so turn-based type of stuff, board games or things like that. Because 3G, while the speeds may support certain types of action, it's the latency that is just too high for acceptable gaming. So if you were thinking that you would, get the Vita and play, Call of Duty, for an example, on the go, well, you're not really going to be able to do that sort of thing unless you're on a Wi-Fi network. 3G is just too high of latency. It would introduce way too much lag to make it even viable. So the stuff that the 3G is useful for is if you want to use it as a browser. Now, if you have a smartphone, the smartphone's probably going to be the better choice, as the browsers are more complex. I mean, the Vita currently doesn't support Flash, and I doubt it will. And the fact that it doesn't do real well with HTML5 either means that you're not going to be able to navigate to a site like YouTube and just watch. So if you've got a smartphone, you'll probably use that. Now, some of that stuff can be addressed with apps in the future, but as of right now, the browser's not that great. So I mean, the 3G is just a little bit of a perk. It does have the GPS built into it if you get the 3G version, which is not true of the Wi-Fi. And at this point, that just makes near a little bit more accurate. But if you want to be future-proofed in case there's some really cool stuff that they decide to leverage with the GPS and 3G functionalities, an extra $50 isn't too much to ask for. I'm personally pretty happy to have the 3G version, though. The data plans are pretty expensive, so I doubt I'll be using the data all that much, but the option is there. Kind of my closing comments on it, I really like the Vita. I'm one of the people who had a launch PSP, and then I upgraded to the 2000, and I actually upgraded to the Go when that launched, and I never really got hooked on the PSP. I tried to like it. I didn't think it was comfortable to hold. I felt that it was just an experience that was just too many console ports. I liked the PS3, kind of got tired of all the updates, and really I just kind of used it for an occasional game here and there. Now, the Vita, if they get creative with it, is something that's just going to be, it's going to be in my hands all the time. I play my 3DS quite a bit, but the Vita's, going to be there fighting for time with it. It's a good, solid handheld, and I think we've got great potential to see some special things going forward. It's all going to depend on developer support and Sony's ability to continue to keep producing for it, keep good partnerships going forward. But the Vita itself is a great piece of hardware, and it's not cheap at $250 or $300 depending on the version you get. Who knows how long the price will stay at that. Unless you're a big handheld gamer, that might be a little bit on the high end of what's fair for a portable. But if you like handheld gaming, I think it's already a decent value. And if you're kind of on the fence, I don't think you'll have to wait too long for a price drop. Maybe the end of the year, maybe next spring. By that point, there could be a good library built up. But as fun as I've had with it so far, I would recommend it. And going forward, as long as the support's there, it's just going to be more and more recommendable. So, nice product from Sony. They learned a lot from the mistakes that they made with the PSP, and they're not repeating them here. So I'm very happy with it, and I hope that for you guys who are picking one up on launch day and in the coming weeks and months, that you have as good of experience with it as I have.